let me backtrack a little bit and start out when we moved to Shelby, which is about 8 years ago. Some of you may recall that when we moved here, I had immediately contracted a very incurable disease, very relative to North Carolina, the furniture capital of the world, it's called. And you may be heard of it, the furniture disease. No, that's kind of where your chest falls down into your drawers. Yeah. I've kind of been fighting that ever since. I don't know if there's going to be a cure anytime soon, so I'm not holding out for any magic drugs, but it is a very unfortunate circumstance for me. However, we also moved here to continue the miracles in Alice's life that actually had begun back in Indiana, of which she is going to tell you about. And then from there, about a year ago, we moved to the Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington area, where we were able to continue those miracles by bringing to print the story of Alice's tragic childhood and of her triumphant finding of her Japanese family after almost a half a century. But of course, she's going to get to tell you about that too. Come to think of it, do you even need me? I mean, why am I here? Oh, all right, I'll stay, but sometimes I wonder. It's the same way at home, just second baggage. People coming in today, greeting Alice, forgot that my name's on the book too, kind of thing. But on a serious note, I was watching television the other day, and the number 17 jumped out at me. And you'll see why a little bit later. But I saw where a prisoner was let out, wrongfully accused, after 17 years of being incarcerated. Can you imagine how he must have felt? To put that in perspective, if you were in your 50s when you were jailed, you'd probably be in your 70s when you got out. If you were in your 40s, you'd probably be about retirement age by now. If you were in your 30s, you would be at least as old as, well, you'd be at least as old as me, because age is not allowed to be talked in the Garlock household anymore. Matter of fact, she cringes when I talk about that 50 mark on the book as well. But let me give you another comparison. Have you ever gone back someplace in your childhood? You visited that old house, that old church, that school playground you used to play on, and it just seems so much smaller today. It's because as a child, everything is just so much bigger. It's the same way with time. As a child, you can't fathom time. When you're a little toddler and they tell you you're going to start school someday, I mean, what's your reaction? It's like, yeah, right. Sure I am. But once you find yourself in school, you're thinking high school, driving a car, liking the opposite sex. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's way off another planet, eternity away. Or college. I mean, it's beyond the universe. It's beyond comprehension to a child to go to college. So imagine if your childhood, all the way to college, was a prison sentence. How would you act? And maybe more importantly, what would you do after your parole? I mean, after all, Alice's story is life on steroids. But it is life, so I'm sure some of you have felt that way. So what have you done with your life? What can you do after being paroled? Alice reminds me of another story, and I'm sure you've heard it, so I'll paraphrase. It was the story of two little boys who seemed arguing with a dog down the street. Well, they're not literally arguing with the dog. They have a dog. But a man from a distance sees them arguing, walks up and says, well, what are you two arguing about? And the first little boy says, well, we found this dog.
It's a puppy.
We found this puppy, and we can't decide who gets to keep it. So we finally agreed whoever tells the biggest lie, boys, you'll relate to this, girls never tell lies though. Whoever tells the biggest lie gets to keep the puppy. Well, the man was just aghast. He goes, I've never told a lie in my life. To which the second little boy says, give him the dog. He wins. Well, Alice's story is not just the unique adversity of her childhood, but it is in the blunt truthfulness of its telling now. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you my wife, not literally, Alice Garlock. What? Sorry. I knew I'd screw up. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you my lovely wife, Alice.
I love doing that. Oh, this is not on.
Is it on? Do you guys hear me back there? Can you hear me, Russ? I don't think it's on. Thank you. Not sure how I'm going to do with this. I'm not used to this at all. Good morning. Ohio gozaimasu in Japanese. Prior to moving to Shelby, our last church requested me to be one of several chaperones that were asked to go on a mission to Buffalo, New York with our youth team. I was horrified, just horrified. Never done that before. And I decided, well, I would just trust God. After returning from the inner city of Buffalo, New York, working with the inner city black children on the playground, literally, there was this mysterious photo. One that I hadn't taken and nobody else had claimed taken. It turned out to be a mysterious, abstract, a shadow of a cross. It just didn't belong with all these pictures of children, but yet somehow it did, because all the youths looked at it as a sign that God thought we were doing a good job on this youth group team. My son was there with that, and it was a really touching thing. And you can view this cross at the end of the service. See, I believe in miracles. In my experiences, I have found that if I don't make a conscious effort to look and find them, I'm not going to find them. In Hebrews 2:4, God testifies to this through His signs, His wonders, and the miracles of the Holy Spirit as distributed according to His will. I have to remember, I'm not up here for me. I'm up here for Him. I feel like everybody's looking at me. My story my story of miracles begins with my mother's story and ends with mine. The title of our book, Spirit Unbroken, represents a journey that begins with her spirit coming to America and mine going to Japan. So, imagine, if you will, an affluent 28-year-old Japanese woman in the middle of the last century, a devoted Buddhist teacher, but yet she yearns to see the world. And then, one day, her dreams come true. She meets a U.S. military policeman, my father, falls in love, gets married, and has her first child, which is my sister. And now she's excited because she's going to finally get to see the streets of gold that the soldiers extravagantly spoke about. And her belly is once again swollen, but with an even lovelier daughter, me. So, if you haven't had a chance to read the book, and I know many of you already have, I want you to know that, and you probably have already, that I am Amy in this book, and Rick is Rob, and I'm going to read you a little bit of a happy time in my life in this book. I snapped to reality with the gentle touch of Rob's hand. I wasn't sure if it was the rain on the plane's window or the moisture welling in the corner of my eyes that caused my blurry vision as I looked down over Fukuoka City, Japan. We had left Tokyo at dusk, and from the air, a sunset never looked more new. As we skirted silently down toward Fukuoka, my heart never felt so refreshed. I was so alive. I was about to touch the family that took so long for me to find. I was about to hold my own blood in my hand and bond with my family. Fears of early childhood rejection crept in and fed on a newfound fear of rejection again. Suddenly, I was thrown back to that small town in rural Indiana, where everybody knows the goings-on of everyone else, especially the latest news of the arrest of my dad for public intoxication.